Welcome to Olds Mob 455. We're in the process of taking this apart. We're gonna get this all freed up, but while I'm at it, I'm just taking all the exhaust, all the stuff that goes to the motor, and it's gonna have to be cleaned up. This is just a bracket that held like leather saddlebags. We're not gonna run them, so I'm just trying to simplify everything. If anything, we just sand it down. If you wanted leather saddlebags on, all that stuff's costly. You'd sand this down, we're not gonna throw it away, you could just paint it. Yeah, there was bad compression in the front cylinder, so it's just gonna get a top end valve job, and then we'll check the cylinder wall and the piston. If you got it apart, might as well redo it. And normally there was a kickstand that clipped back here, and you'd stand on the kickstand and get it up on the back end, and then you loosen up these two bolts, and you lift it up this, they call it like a dresser fender. Then you could slide the wheel out. Otherwise, if you had this long of a solid fender, you'd have to lift the bike all the way up to get it off the fender. So I was just showing you how this hinge works on this back fender to get the wheel out. A lot of guys would just bob that right there, and they'd take that off when they were making a, and they came back from World War II, there was thousands of these things around, especially the military type. You could get Army surplus bikes, and then they'd strip as much off them as they could. A lot of guys had big ape hangers on them. So in order to get this engine out of here, I have to get the exhaust all separated, all this bracketry, the exhaust was in here. And to get it out, there's two little set screws that locked into these pipes. And then there was a crossover tube. Wait till you see that. But you'll see how crushed flat this is to clear the pump. And then from hitting the ground, it's gotten flattened. And then you got to get it off of this pipe and then loosen it up. You can finally get this thing out of here. And in order to have a crossover pipe, there was this flexi tube and then a clamp that went around that. But hey, look at what this thing's trying to breathe through. It's really not good for flow. Well, this is the inspection cover. This is a little access hole to check the clutch. You can adjust this with the, it's a rod that goes through, and that's what would be like setting your throat bearing. The amount of lever action, most guys have a clutch up here, but this has a foot action. You got to have it where it's going to come into play with the amount of motion that you have with either a lever or the pedal. So then you got to have these tight enough to have enough pressure on these springs to squeeze on the clutch plates. The first thing you do is they tell you how many threads are supposed to be showing, and then you adjust up that screw, lock her down. It's been hit a bunch of times underneath, and that's more than pounding out. I think it needs a new one. This is just direct drive. It's got a sprocket from the motor back to the transmission. So let's say if you don't have it enough RPM and the engine's chugging, that's just like a harsh load on the chain and all the connecting rods and everything. So later on they came out with it's called a compensator sprocket. I mean, the Indians had gears. So a lot of guys liked Indians. They seemed like they were more durable with gears in between here, but it's easier to work on with the chain. When I disconnected the bolts underneath the transmission, I thought I could get this chain loose enough and then get it off, but you can't. It's like half on and half off, and I can't get it off. But you probably got to have it on there anyway if you wanted to take that nut off that's on the clutch. So to properly do this, you would want a bolt that's longer, and you stick it in here and you get some threads on it, and then you get a washer that holds this plate and a nut behind it, and then as you tighten the nut, it would be squeezing all these springs, and then you're not putting tension on here. You'll see the dimple right there, and you'll see this one's not even seated on it. So if you look straight down on it, see how these springs are tight and these springs are loose? So the only thing you had for a clutch was half engagement. You want to have these threads all equal. And if you watch this thing, they're wobbly because you're never going to get it exactly the same, but you try to get it where you're getting even grip on the clutch disc all the way around. Now the newer ones, they just have a big, like they call it a Belleville washer, spring washer, diaphragm washer, and as you tighten down on it, it acts just like a diaphragm clutch on a clutch pressure plate and flywheel on a car. This is goofy. They had other ones that had 5, then you just had 5. It was more complicated, but you got more even pressure on the clutch plates. But this has got so wimpy a power, it's not that big of a deal. People always complain that Harley's leaked oil. Well, they've really improved now with cast aluminum housings that go around here, and then there's O-rings and shit like that. This was just sheet metal back in the day, and the bolts were loose, and then here's a tube that comes over from the oil pump side, and it drips oil on this chain, and it was just supposed to be a total loss, you know. It just, this wasn't even made to contain it. Transmission has 3 bolts. There's studs coming out from underneath, and you see one going here, one going here, and then one's under here. There was a previous transmission that only had 2 bolts. This third one stiffens it up better. But see this hole right here? That's how you would be tightening up a bolt, and it would be pushing the tranny forward, or you'd have to pull it back. Look at this bolt. Boing, boing, boing. So it wasn't even going through the hole in the back of that, you know, you'd call it the swing arm area, or the rear tail of the rigid frame. So we're gonna have to get a straight bolt and then have it go through there. There's 2 of these through bolts, and before I could get that tranny out with that tin that connects the tranny to the engine, this had to be unthreaded. And then this went through here, and this is where your footboards go from here to here. Well, this one had this big crash bar that connected to it, and then your brake lever and all that is connected on here, but you can see where it got hit, and, well, I can't turn it. But I couldn't take it off because the kickstand connects on that side, and then the bike would fall over. Well, this is from 1949. I bet you some of this grease at the bottom is from 1949 because it is really thick. And we're just trying to get all this crap off so that when we drop it off, it won't be embarrassing. I mean, when you drop something off to be fixed and it looks like this, and they don't even want to touch it because it's so greasy, they aren't going to be too enthused about working on it. So if you can get it all cleaned up and it's not that much of a bitch to work on, I'm sure they'll attack it quicker. This is just cheesy.
Some mineral spirits here.
This is what you get after about an hour of scrubbing, wire brushing, spritzing it down with mineral spirits, and we got it somewhat cleaned up so it doesn't look like a pigsty. So you got to shorten up this tube. Where's our screwdriver? Oh. You'll see this is how you adjust the valve lash right here. So we got to disconnect these threads before we take the base nuts off and pull the cylinder off. Oh, is there broken rings? Oh, that's why I was huffing oil. The cylinders aren't scored. mean, I'll show you. This is just carbon.
There's side play,
So you came up to the top.
but there really isn't much for end play.
Sounds nasty.
Will the expert look at this?
I don't have the spring compressor that fits this, and you guys might freak out that I'm doing this, but I'm just taking this, and when you hit the spring, you're gonna release the tension on the locks and it's gonna come apart. And I know somebody's gonna say, that's terrible.
You got it all?
1.5. You're just taking it off the, you're hitting it fast enough where it unloads that lock. Goes nice and easy through here, and then you're grabbing it and you're trying to wiggle it. Now there's no way a valve can seal if it's dancing all, if you got an oblong hole, be touching on one side, touching on the other, touching over there. So that's why you got to keep your valve in the center of the guide, and they give it 1.5 thousandths usually. I don't know what it is for an air-cooled engine. It's been a while, but this one, I'm grabbing it like here and here, and I'm wiggling it, and you'd have to mic it up. They heat this up, knock it through, I think that way, because this has got a shoulder, and just press in new ones. What fell? There's a chunk missing. Where did that piece go?
It's a big chunk missing.
And what are the odds that a piece of ring dropped in the engine? I don't know where it went. Well, somehow this got too tight between here and here, locked this up, and then the ring cracked. So you see this is all worn right here where that chunk that was broken was flopping around. This distance between here and here is way too big now. See how this doesn't fit? That chunk was flopping around for a long time. This is most likely, well, as it's going up and down, that's where it's wearing. This is blow-by down the sides. This is all burnt gases